Welcome to Reframe the podcast, helping you reframe your thought patterns, habits and mindsets to create the life that you want to lead. Today we are chatting with Becky Scott, and Becky is founder and instructor of Misfits Workouts. Becky is a leading voice in the anti-weight stigma movement, the health every size movement, and a non-diet approach to fitness and well-being. Becky promotes a holistic approach to fitness, one that's not about aesthetics. She's more about building confidence than muscle, more about losing inhibitions than inches. She has so much wisdom to impart, and I would just like to personally thank her for her kindness, because she let me record this twice after I forgot to hit record the first time. Enjoy our chat. The start is for you to just tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and how you came to be doing what you are doing.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you very much for having me. My name's Becky and I am the founder and instructor from Misfits Workout. We do dance-based exercise for people who don't feel at home at the gym. So my audience is often people who are anxious about going into exercise spaces for various reasons, but the most common ones tend to be because they feel out of place because of the way that they look or their confidence around being in fitness spaces. I've been an instructor for almost 2 years, not quite, nearly 2 years, and started doing classes in the community locally. And then since lockdown, I've been doing them online. And there's part of me that sort of has realised that I should have been online a long time ago, because it fits really well with what I'm doing. Like, people who don't want to go out to exercise because they feel uncomfortable in fitness spaces feel much more comfortable to exercise in their own homes. So I wish I'd thought of it sooner, but that's one of the positive things to come out of like this lockdown situation. Sort of fell into becoming an instructor sort of by accident, really. I've been blogging about fitness as a plus size person, and about kind of moving my body without a weight loss kind of approach, and had opportunities through my local council to get involved with the This Girl Can campaign as an ambassador locally. And then there was some funding and lots of encouragement from my instructor, dance teacher at the time, to train as an instructor. And I sort of started off thinking, I'll give this a go and see what happens. And here we are 2 years later, and I'm getting invited onto podcasts to talk about it.
Yay! Super exciting.
Yeah.
And what do you think is that difference? So you started by saying, you know, creating a kind of safe space for people to exercise who may not want to go outside or go to the gym. Why do you think that's important? What does that difference make, creating that space to people and engaging in movement?
It takes away some of that anxiety. So people have anxiety often from previous traumatic experiences, either in fitness spaces or just in life. That means that they assume that fitness spaces are not set up for them and are not going to be welcoming, hospitable places. Like, some of that is from their own experience, some of it's from the experience of others, and so that's the difference. It's about having somewhere that you can feel safe and exist. For me, in a fat body, but there are lots of other reasons that people come to my classes, that is without that kind of judgment. It's a judgment-free space. So I think that's what it is. It's about being able to be free and yourself without those anxieties or worries that you might have if you were going into a traditional fitness space.
But actually, that's interesting in itself, isn't it? That, you know, it begs the question, what is it about traditional fitness spaces that make them feel a little bit hostile?
Well,
I can think of one Instagrammer who got on my tits this morning with a post. I don't know about you. I don't know if you saw him, but I thought, you're the reason why.
Well, and I think that's it. I think there's an awful lot of the fitness industry can be a wonderful place if you look a certain way and you have a certain aesthetic. Like, you are praised for the way that you look or the definition of your muscles. Somebody putting in the same amount of energy or work who doesn't have that same aesthetic can be approached and said, and like I was, where someone comes up to you and goes, good on you, you'll get there. The sort of assumption that I was there to lose weight 5 years into having gone to that gym. Like, you know, there's a lot of those kind of like microaggressions that come from being in a fitness space when you don't look the part. and there's a lot around sort of thin being the healthy way to look, and fat being, like, assumptions are made, like the weight stigma and fat phobia is rife in the world, but in the fitness industry it kind of takes it up a notch, because that is the space where you go to make changes. Therefore, if those changes are not happening, there's assumptions made that you're not working hard enough, and that just isn't the case, actually. So it's about having somewhere that you can go and be, uh, that's free from that rubbish.
Yeah, and absolutely, it isn't the case, and there is this kind of, we've, been sold and bought into this theory that it's just a matter of, willpower and work hard enough. But actually, most of the individuals who meet that aesthetic or are succeeding in that space are doing that because, well, half the time, if not all of the time, they have that genetic disposition anyway.
Yeah.
But equally, I don't know if you would agree that those spaces, as you say, if we don't make them safe and accepting and nice places to be, and we continue to make the emphasis on meeting a particular body shape or size or weight loss, in the same way, if someone goes to the doctor and the conversation is, going for their sore elbow, but the conversation is constantly, well, whilst you're here, can we have a conversation about your weight? We're going to push people away from health promoting behaviors, aren't we? We're going to create that space, that distance. Who
Yeah.
would want to?
Oh, definitely. Like, definitely from my own experience and other people that come to my classes. I, in my like, in my youth, I was a dancer. I did ballet, tap and modern through, like, until I was in my early teens. But because I wasn't in a body shape that was going to be able to go on point, I was not, like, and I didn't really want to mess up my ankles for a hobby. I didn't think I could ever be a professional dancer. So I gave it up, but I gave up the whole lot because I thought, if I can't do it, I'm not doing any of it. I'm not going to be a dancer. So this is all a waste of time. So just literally got rid of the whole thing, and then found myself doing workouts that didn't bring me joy, or taking part in PE that I hated. And not really, like, recognizing that dance was exercise, which sounds stupid to me now, but at the time that's what I thought. It wasn't in the list of exercises that, that burnt calories or whatever. Therefore it wasn't valid. And I think I've had, like, a lifetime of trying new things, and basically at the point that my weight would plateau, which does, because that is science, I would then give it up and think, oh well, it's obviously not working, it's obviously, and that was my only motivator. And if your only motivator is something that is not possible, like, you will lose interest. Whereas if you can find things that you enjoy whilst you're doing them, and that are joy creating either during or immediately after, then you are more driven to take part in those behaviors, and therefore, like, that's better for everybody, surely. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. But it's practicing, isn't it? It's practicing acknowledging what those things are.
Yeah.
And, we're so used to kind of externalizing our measures of success when it comes to exercise. I've worked with clients who, they will jog by the side of the bed to close their rings
Oh,
on their watch.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or stomping up and down the kitchen in order to get to their 10,000 steps,
Yeah,
or
because
whatever it
that's
is.
that's the point. Oh, I've succeeded. That's that the box I needed to tick. And actually, one of the first things I do is encourage them to take their wearables off, and engage with exercise without any kind of external measure. Just how did you feel? Could you go for longer? Were you happier all afternoon? Did you find yourself snapping less at your husband that day? What are the other benefits? Did you come away smiling?
Yeah, exactly. Did you have a good time whilst you were
Yeah.
doing it, rather than the kind of, like, hitting particular numbers? Does it matter?
Yeah.
Does it, and is it actually the joy in the doing whatever it is you're doing, whether that is dancing, lifting heavy things, I don't know, yoga, or all of it? It all is all valuable, and it all counts and helps us to improve our health and well-being, and surely
Yeah.
that should be the focus, rather than hitting a number. And why is it that that number is the thing that makes us happy and successful? Like, that's the other thing. If 9,999 steps makes you feel miserable and 10,000 steps makes you feel great, like there's some questioning to do there, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah, hugely. And you know, when we've spoken before, we've talked about the fact that where did that number come from? And there's
Yeah.
this kind of trust, there's this implicit trust in the experts, and I'm putting that in inverted commas, in the health and fitness industry, that you know that these numbers matter. Equally, though, I think it's important to say, you know, in a formal fitness environment, the things people can experience that can be negative. But how do you think, or what do you think needs to happen to make a fitness environment, or your classes, for example, what is it that you do that make them feel safe and accepting places?
So I think it's about sort of managing expectations. It's about people knowing what it will be like. Like being friendly and approachable is obviously part of that, but also like setting limitations about what things will be discussed. So for example, in my classes I've got a misfits mandate which outlines the kind of rules, if you like, but it's not as it's not as scary as that, about what is expected in terms of behavior. And some of those things are like safety measures, like wearing proper footwear, bringing something to drink, making sure that you warm up and cool down. But there's also things about like language that we use. We speak positively about our bodies. We don't talk about weight changes in either direction, negatively or positively. We don't talk about diets, so it is free from that conversation, which doesn't mean that it can't still be part of your life outside of my classes. But it means that that space is then held as a safe space for the people that are taking part in it. And feedback from the people who come to my classes find that particularly helpful, that they haven't had in other fitness spaces. So people that engage regularly in exercise have found that in other spaces those assumptions are made, and they know that mine won't have that. So I think that is the biggest difference. And the same with personal trainers that work in that way. You know, they have a lot of people that will approach them saying, my aim is to lose a certain amount of weight, and they'll say, well, you know, I don't work in that way, but this is what I can offer. You know, these are the benefits that I can bring to you. Is that something that works for you? And then it's up to the individual, isn't it, to decide if they want to try that route. Often still with the assumption that their bodies will change, but over time you kind of hope that people will learn that that is not the only aim here, that there are other benefits that you can feel. Like how do you feel when you're doing it? Do you feel stronger? Do you feel, are you experiencing less pain? Are you experiencing better mood? Like what are you getting from this, to realize that those are the benefits, because that's more likely to like last beyond any body changes that happen, and make the most difference to our well-being, both physically and mentally. And surely that's more valuable than the way our bodies look.
Yeah, or a number on the scales, definitely.
Yeah,
Which, you know, we
exactly.
may have got. Oh, sorry. You know, we may have got to that number through unhealthy practices. And as you say,
Yeah.
there's this assumption that if you look a certain way, or you weigh a certain number, that you are healthy. But we know from science, we know from studies that that isn't the case.
Yeah, I mean, there's people of every body weight that are both healthy and unhealthy, that have healthy behaviors and unhealthy behaviors. You know, there is no set benchmark of where, right, suddenly you are healthy and you will live longer. You know, it's not as clear cut as that. We're not machines. We are human beings with, you know, lots of other things going on, both internally and externally, that have an impact on it. And it's not just about the weight or the size. That's not the only thing.
Yeah. How do you think your relationship with exercise, do you feel it's changed over time by engaging in exercise in this way? I mean, before then, were you engaging in exercise, you know, driven by weight loss, or driven by those kind of that external fear, which is a crappy motivator, but you know, the one we're told to
Yeah,
live
definitely.
by?
I mean, I think all of the exercises that I have engaged in over the years, I have found enjoyment in them. Like actually, no, that's not true. I went to a spinning class once and hated it. I hated every minute of it. But generally speaking, with the exception of spinning and running, which I didn't like, I didn't get much joy from running either. But all of the things I've tried, I've been involved in martial arts. I've done all kinds of different dancey stuff. I love a bit of Zumba. I love circuits. I really like a good quality circuit or boot camp style workout. I like those kinds of things. But for most of my workout life, from about the age of like 10 up until, well, into my 30s, the point of going, the motivator was about weight loss. So when that stopped happening, I lost interest and then would move on
Mm.
to the next big thing that was going to change my life. Whereas actually, it was finding Zumba actually where I started to think, like, this is the one, this is the thing that's gonna save me. And I have not given up exercise since I started doing Zumba, but my focus, I added more classes in each week and my body didn't change. And I was like, do you know what? I actually enjoy it and I'm feeling other benefits. So it kind of happened by accident. At the same time, sort of reading around like body positivity, fat liberation, things around health
Mm.
at every size, like the planets aligned at a time where I happened to be actively engaged in exercise, that I realized that there were other things. But it was, most of my life has been the other way, like stop start, like trying things, giving them up. um so it's kind of nice now to still try things and give them up, but there is always a constant that I'm doing some sort of exercise as and when I feel like it. But most of the time, most weeks, there will be movement,
Yeah.
um yeah.
And it has to come from that intrinsic motivator, doesn't it? The fact is, the common thread listening to you now is I bloody enjoyed it. If I enjoyed it, I kept doing it.
And that's kind of it. Like for my class, like idea of doing my classes, I really enjoy Zumba. I did consider being a Zumba instructor, but I felt like there were that by becoming level 2 qualified and having the ability to kind of create my own stuff, which I know you can do as a Zumba instructor, but creating my own brand rather than subscribing
Mm.
to someone else meant that I could really sort of direct it in a way that meant something for me. And for me, it is that kind of joy, the sort of fun aspect, a little bit silly really sometimes, that kind of part of it, and picking my own music and picking my own choreography and moving my body in a way that I like and that the people who come to my classes find joyful, like meant a lot to me. Making something that's really sort of built around what makes me happy and hoping that other people find it
Yeah.
makes them happy too.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if you agree, but on the journey to having, I like to use the term like a peaceful relationship with food and exercise, we do have to turn back inward, don't we? We have to try and find, trust back in us, because over time we're taught, and I think, I tried to think about this the other day. I was thinking about, when does that start? When does that conversation start? Is it at school with other children? Is it at puberty when you begin to feel a little bit alien in your body and you're naturally putting weight on? At what point do we go from being the children that intuitively eat and move and just get on with our day, to questioning everything?
I think we're told quite early on, aren't we? Like the idea that our sort of my youngest is 8, and I know that he has already talked to me about the eat well plate. you know, you know, he already knows that you're supposed to eat certain amounts of certain things that in order to be healthy, and he talks about good foods and bad foods and all of this stuff, which obviously I challenge and we
Yep.
discuss other options. But the school is telling him that this is what health looks like and this is what you should and shouldn't eat, and that these that is the way that we live. Now my kids obviously live in my house and know that that is not what I subscribe to. We've got a lot of fat liberation, intuitive eating literature around. Like they see me reading books, they ask what it's about. Like they're not they will make their own decisions. The same, like I don't make decisions about what they eat. I'm vegetarian, my children aren't. Like if they ask me why I don't eat meat, I tell them, but it's their decision to make, not mine, and I feel quite strongly about that. So the idea that they're coming home and telling me about good foods and bad foods
Mm.
like fills me with horror.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's no such thing, they have desserts, they have meals. They understand that there are foods that are nourishing and that are that will give them different things, but there's nothing good or bad about food. It depends on the time and the place and what you're needing it for. If you need an energy boost, or you need, if you need something that's going to make you feel full for a long time, like, toast is perfectly fine
Mm.
for that. Carbs are not bad. Like, carbs are an important part of our diet.
Mm.
And there's so much around that. So I think we're taught it from a very early age. Also, households will have that kind of diet culture-esque stuff going on. Often there will be mums that are dieting. Those behaviors are seen by the children. That becomes normal. Like, there's
Mm.
no kind of question around it. That's what mainly women, but it's not just women, that's what we do. The adults don't have the biscuits or the sweets or the cakes because they're being good.
Yeah.
And you see kids like role modeling that, like they start to practice those behaviors because they think that that's what you do.
Mm. Or
you know
question, am I bad? Because I've had that.
yeah,
Mummy doesn't eat the biscuits because she's being good, but I eat the biscuits.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's bringing our awareness, isn't it, to the language we use around exercise and food, and also bringing in awareness to how our inherited kind of beliefs and rules may play out as anxieties that we then put on the kids around,
yeah,
do,
definitely.
do you really need that? Or even subconsciously, the kind of thing I've seen play out with clients is they say, well, I don't eat, I let the kids have pasta, but I don't have it. I'll have a bowl of soup. And I say, but what message are you sending your children? Do you really think at the age of, 15, they're not looking and thinking, well, what's wrong with the pasta if mum won't eat it?
Mm. It's interesting you say that. Recently, the kids asked why they have pudding and we don't. And I think it was to see whether or not it was because, pudding is for children. Like, we don't have that. We're being good. And I said, like, we have bigger meals and I'm not
Yeah.
hungry after my
Yeah.
meal. Like, that's why we don't have pudding. Also, like, from when kids are really little, like toddler age, you're taught, that you give children lots of food and lots of variety, and that should really include something, you've got more chances of getting food in them if you
Yeah.
give them lots of different things. So that's the what we've always done. We have a main meal, we all eat the same thing together, and then the children will have a pudding from a variety of things that they can pick from, of varying nourishment quality, but usually something sweet and tasty. um but and they said, like, why don't you have pudding? And sometimes, very occasionally, we will have pudding, but actually, whilst they're having pudding, we're doing the washing up, putting the stuff away, and I'm usually full because I've eaten my fill from the meal, and that is fine. Like, it's not about restriction there, it's about choice. And if I did want it, I would have some, or
Mm.
I might have something to eat later on when they've gone to bed. So
Mm.
but I did think it was interesting that they had noticed and asked, and I thought
Yeah.
that will be happening in other households under other circumstances, and they'll get a very different answer.
Yeah.
So yeah, and
Yeah.
it is interesting. There's no right or wrong, really. Like, we're all doing the best with
No,
the information we've got,
absolutely.
and there are different ways to do things, but I it just feels like our culture, this sort of diet culture stuff, is teaching people habits that are not, like, they're not life affirming. They're not things that will encourage a long and happy life. It's,
No.
a life of restriction and calorie counting and stuff takes up so much time that could be better spent doing something more interesting.
Yeah. Well, I read a statistic. I've read two statistics recently. One, that the average woman spends 17 years of her life on a diet. 17 years.
I can
I
believe it.
mean,
I've spent more
my
than that myself, definitely.
um, and on average, we'll try 500 different types of diets.
Wow,
Yeah. I mean,
500.
now if you think to yourself, how much of your life, if I could say to you, I'll give you 20 years of your life back, what would you do differently? It's bringing our awareness to that, isn't it? How much of ourselves we sold out into diet culture?
Exactly. Like, for me, like, people say, I don't know how you find the time, and I think that is where my time comes from. I'm not planning
Yeah.
meals, I'm not obsessing over those sorts of things. It gave me enough time to do a fitness qualification, start a business. I still work full time, so that happens around it because I'm not spending time doing all of that stuff. It's amazing how much time it
Yeah,
takes up.
definitely. And you're not exhausted through lack of
No,
food and
no, I am
energy.
not.
And
Yeah.
I do, there is a very real cycle based around restriction and lower energy and the production of serotonin and feeling low and depressed,
Mm,
and therefore then not being able to get ourselves out of perhaps more erratic eating behaviors, and it interrupts our sleep. And actually it kind of gets missed in all the calories in, calories out, bro, kind of Fitspo talk, that our psychological and our physiological relationship with food are so highly interrelated.
mm, yeah, definitely, yeah. And I would imagine, like, at this point, the beginning of February, there's a lot of people that have started their New Year's resolutions that are
Yeah,
now, like, I think that's probably part of why the mood at the moment is so low as a nation, like, or as a world, is because there's so many people that are going through all of this terrible experience and difficult, challenging time on really low calorie intake, so they
yeah,
will be even more miserable and not feeling, nourished and happy in their bodies. I think there's also an assumption that if you are in a bigger body, that like, have donuts for breakfast every day and stuff, but it's not about that either. There is some middle ground here. Like, listen, when you really truly listen to what your body needs, that includes all of the, like, traditionally good stuff as well, lots of
yeah,
fruit and veg and all of those things. But it's about not restricting some of the other stuff when you
yeah,
feel like it or when your body needs it, and by having it as, like, being open to having whatever means that you don't ever have that restriction, so you don't then feel that you have to have loads of it because you don't know when the next time it's going
mm,
to happen again is. So
yeah.
yeah,
That
there's definitely a lot there.
food neutrality, isn't it? And the minute we stop, the minute we give ourselves unconditional permission to do many things in life, the easier our relationship with it becomes, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, definitely.
So in your opinion, what do you think is important to bear in mind with regards to having that healthy relationship with our, with food, with our body image, and with exercise?
I think it's about, like, being in touch with your own kind of, like, body rhythms, and that sounds a
Yeah.
bit kind
Yeah.
of
No.
hippie-ish, but like, I spent most of my teens and 20s being told not to trust what my body was telling me, that I wasn't hungry, that I should just have a glass of water, and that I should move more. And that, I remember on one particular thing, I started going to, like, a weight loss gym program where I started exercising, and then I was hungrier and I needed to eat more, and I, like, met
Yeah.
with one of the instructors and said, like, I'm really trying, but I'm, like, ravenous. I'm really hungry. And they were like, well, you just have to eat less. And that was, like, the answer. And I'm like, but I'm really, really hungry all the time. And of course I was hungry because I was moving more. I was exercising regularly. But that was not, like, no, that's not what we do. Like, ignore what your body is telling you. This is definitely enough food for all bodies. And you'll be fine. Just keep at it. Whereas, like, it didn't last very long. Um,
No.
but and I think, yeah, like, listening to the cues of our body, like, we're taught to ignore them and that they're wrong, but actually they're probably right. Like, what is it that your body needs? Is it food? Is it movement? Because sometimes, actually, I feel like just having a dance around the kitchen while I'm cooking the dinner, because that's what I need in that moment. And that's what I do. And so, yeah, there are limitations on that. Sometimes we can't do all of those things, but most weekends we'll go for a big dog walk, or, you know there are nice things that are good to do, that are, make you feel connected to people and make you feel like moving your bodies. And then there's other times where I just want to sit on the sofa and watch a film, snuggle up under a blanket, and that is good too. Like, that serves purposes in other ways. But yeah, like, being more in touch with, intuitively moving and exercising and eating is the thing. I think that we all need to, like, listen, be present in what's
Mm.
happening, rather than living to some sort of plan that
Yeah.
somebody else dictates. Our
It was
bodies know what they
sustainable.
need.
Yeah. And it's the only way to make anything sustainable, in my opinion. I
Mm,
think, there is no way you can sustain anything if it's coming from an external source of, fear or a set of, we've talked about before how we, externalize our measures of well-being. We've talked about diet culture and kind of the impact it can have on how we engage with food and how we engage with movement. But how do you think it negatively impacts our overall well-being? Because our health, our well-being is so much more, isn't it, than just, well, you eat this and do that 3 times a week and jobs are good. And
There are so many things that impact on our health and well-being, and so many of those things are kind of ignored. Like, we're told that the things that will have an impact on our health and well-being are eating usually less, but eating nourishing food and moving our bodies more. But there are so many other things, like there's social determinants of health, which is kind of a
yeah,
sort of catch-all term for loads of different things that impact on things that are beyond our control. There's things to do with the postcode that we live in and access to healthcare. There's things around our genetics. There's things around our race. All of those things pay an impact. And most of that is not something that's within our control. And certainly for a lot of people, it's not in their control. If you live in a poor area and you don't have the ability to move to another area with better healthcare, like, that is not something within your power, no matter how much people tell you it's a choice. It just simply isn't. And certainly around our bodies too, like, we can do healthful behaviors that will make a difference to our to to our health, to our mental health, to our well-being, to our strength, our reduce our pain, and all of those things, feel connected to our community, whether it's a literal community where we live or an online community. All of those things have an impact, and it's not just as simple as the calories in, calories out. And like you said before, it's sustainable. It's something that you can keep doing and that will keep making a difference and making us feel, like, feeling those benefits. It doesn't
yeah,
just have to be about one particular way that isn't sustainable. Like, there's
yeah.
time for a change there.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if you agree, but the kind of people that are selling us the diets and the one size fits all, buy my menu plan, buy my shake, they're benefiting most of the time from genetic and thin privilege.
Well,
It's easier for
absolutely. They
them.
totally are. They totally are. And I mean, one thing that I think is worth looking at is how many of those weight loss companies, diet companies, sell my shakes are, how many of those are like not for profit social enterprises, and how many of them are actual businesses that are making an awful lot of money? Because if it's a business and it's making money, then they are selling you a product. Like, it's not about making the world a better or healthier place. It's about making somebody somewhere much richer. And the diet industry and fitness industry is built on that. It's built on money making. And if you can get people to aspire to buy a product that they will always need, then you'll keep
Yeah,
going back. Like, that's the
yeah,
idea. Like,
yeah,
the idea is that if we find, the fear from the fitness and diet industry is that if we teach people that there is another way, like, why they won't need us anymore. Like, we'll unhook them from this need. But actually, like, there's a different way. You can sell something that people enjoy doing. Like, it doesn't have to be something that is feared or bought from shame or all of those things. There's so many more opportunities, but the fear from the industry is that if we're not, like, aspiring to be smaller, then we'll stop buying those products. And some of them we definitely will stop buying, but there
yeah.
are other things that we can still do, but look at it through a different lens and enjoy it in a different way.
I mean, how do you think then, as a fitness professional, we can support a shift away from diet culture? If you've got PTs listening to this now, people training in the fitness industry, people working in the industry, how can we support that shift away from these quite often not healthy behaviors around exercise and movement?
I think there's two things here. Like, the work that I'm doing with the Fitness Professionals Against Weight Stigma, or FPAWS for short, is around providing training and information to fitness professionals, both that are aspiring fitness professionals and already working in the industry. And it's around understanding what weight stigma is, what our traditional qualifications or training has taught us about this and where the truth is there. So it's providing things around the research that actually doesn't support this kind of weight centric approach, and also around the like lived experience of people that are going into these fitness spaces, and the challenges that they are having in the way that they are being made to feel. And that like says a lot. You really feel quite a lot from that around how there is a need to change here. And then it's about like providing practical stuff around how do you work with bigger bodies, like what are the things that you should and shouldn't say. You know, there are things that I can say to people in my class because I'm in a bigger body that would not be okay if they were said from somebody who was half my size.
Mm.
You know, like how do you navigate that, because there's a lot of fear there about saying the wrong things or
Yes.
offending somebody, or you know, so about offering like training and support about what that looks like and how that can be, and giving people confidence that it's okay to say these things and do these things and practice in this way and the benefits that it brings. And I think over time that community that is working in this way, that is much more kind of uh, uh, you know, working against weight stigma to try and make these places happier places for everybody, I think that we'll start to see a culture change, because it will be much harder to kind of push back against it when you're seeing the positive outcomes.
Yeah.
And people don't want to believe that that is the case, so it's very easy to dismiss it because we've been doing it this way for so long. So you know, we're seen as kind of like a niche, but that's going to grow. People will realize that there are other ways to do things, and once clients realize that that's an option and start to request it, you know, at the moment it tends to be like one instructor in a gym if you can find one locally, but I think that that will grow over time, and there's a, you know, a growing network. We're supporting each other, we're building each other's confidence up, that it's possible to work in this way and have clients. Because that's the other thing, like there's a fear that if you move away from the weight loss model, that you won't get clients.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
evidence is there that there are people that want that, and that will grow as people realize that it's an option. If it's not available, you can't try it and you don't know if it's going to work. So I think it's a kind of, there's both sides of it: more training and support for professionals so that they can deliver work in it, so they can work in this way, and also encouragement and support for clients that there are safe options out there. So I think
Yeah.
it's kind of both. Like, it's okay to ask for this. You're not asking for something that is, you know, a fantasy. This exists, and here
Mm.
are some examples of it.
Yeah. And it
um
exists and it's growing, isn't it? It is
yeah,
growing, and it's so exciting. It's really exciting. Um, but I think we talked about, you mentioned there about weight stigma, and I think we kind of have a responsibility to talk. It's not just people's, you know, people think about fat phobia or fat shaming, which are, you know, really important things to think about. But we also need to make people aware, especially in the fitness industry, of the health implications, the negative health implications of weight stigmatization, because I
yeah,
don't think
definitely.
people know, because they assume
Hmm.
weight loss equals good health. But actually, what we know from lots of studies, don't we, is that weight stigma can have a very direct impact on people's health.
Oh, definitely. The idea that like these kind of behaviors around shaming people or making them feel bad is helping them to motivate them is just not true.
Yeah.
It actually has the opposite effect and makes people less keen to try exercise. um but as well as that, as well as weight stigma being an issue, there's also things around like weight cycling. So the idea that losing weight and putting it back on, and losing weight and putting it back on, which is the traditional cycle that we see in the fitness and diet industry, that is more like has more health implications than if you
Yeah.
just stayed at the original size in the first
Yeah.
place. And like for someone who spent a lifetime circling through that, like I worry about the damage I've done, but I've said like no more. Like I'm going to do healthy things to improve my behaviors, but I'm not going to go in that cycle, because that's really unhealthy. So the combination of that and weight stigma in general, the fact that it stops people going to get the healthcare they need, it stops people exercising, it stops people feeling okay to eat in public, all of those things, the shame that comes with that, and the stress and the impact that that has on our health is much more damaging than the fat itself.
Mm.
Like there's
Yeah.
so much there. And that, like, these weight stigma can affect people of all body sizes. Like, you don't have to be at the super fat end to experience weight stigma. It is a scale, you know. The bigger you are, and the less able-bodied you are, the more stigma that you experience. Because I'm an instructor, and because I can move, like, I get less grief than somebody who was in the same size body as me that perhaps might be in a wheelchair or walks with a stick, because assumptions are made about their health or their abilities based on their appearance. And actually, like, there's no difference. We're not more or less valuable because we have a disability or ability. We're not more or less valuable based on the size of our bodies. Like, that should not be a thing. We should all be valued. We should all be respected. We should not be dehumanized because of our appearance. It's madness. And when you start to unpick it, you think, I can't, you know, this is not something that I can just sit back and allow to happen. We've got to do something about it.
Yeah. And I think you have to start getting angry. You have to
Yeah.
start getting cross, because at the minute you get cross, that anger, it's what propels the movement, isn't it? You know, and I've mentioned to you before, in when we've chatted previously, about I'm qualifying at the minute to work with active eating disorders, and a lot of the reading material I'm covering is sections on predisposing factors, and we can't pinpoint, you know, it tends to be a perfect storm for individuals that then enter disordered eating patterns. But the one behavior that sits at the beginning in almost all cases is someone who's engaged in a diet.
It's terrifying, isn't it, to think that to think that the thing that we think is going to save us is the thing that leads to more difficulties and more challenges
and distress. Absolutely. And I don't know if you agree, but I think we have a responsibility. You know, I think Karen Preen wrote a post this morning which I thought was really pertinent. She said, if you keep, you know, health professionals keep, I'm going to be really inarticulate, I can't remember exactly what she wrote, but something along the lines of, you know, if it was really about health, if you're really worried about health, why don't you make your environment somewhere safe and accepting to be?
Exactly.
Yeah, you just think, yeah. And
It's
I don't know
true,
how anyone can read it and not go and question. It's bringing awareness, isn't it? Because and I think the reality is that lots of people working in the fitness and health industry come with, you know, and even in my world, you know, people who didn't go down the same route as I did, and who went down the more traditional nutrition, health coaching kind of lane, come with the intention they still believe what they're doing is helping people.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, there's with the work that we're doing with Against Weight Stigma, with fitness professionals against weight stigma, we get some examples sent to us, and you see posts from personal trainers or gyms that are like, I'm trying to save your life. Like, you know, like, they're getting angry too, that they're sort of, you know, people are like you, all of this nonsense, like you're causing more harm. Like, they feel very passionately the other way. But the fact is, like, fitness professionals are not lifesavers. Like, they're not there to they're there to support and bring about healthy behaviors and bring about change. They're not, like, they cannot change all of those other factors. They are not a doctor. They are not the healthcare professionals. They don't know about all of those other things. Like, stay in your lane. Like, deal with the bit that is your responsibility. And as a fitness professional, that is about healthful behaviors around movement. And if you have some sort of nutrition qualification and you want to talk about what you can add to improve your diet in the broader sense of the term, then fine. But if you don't have that, don't get involved in that. Stay in your lane.
Yeah. And what do you think about our next generation as well? You know, we're both mums. It's really interesting watching, I have friends whose children are in co-ed schools. So my eldest two are a teen and almost a teen. And both of mine are in single sex schools. The local ones here are single sex. And one of the things they said about the all-girls school, which I thought was really interesting, is they said by being in an all-girls school, girls are more willing to engage in exercise in a way that they wouldn't if they were under the male gaze at school as teenagers, at that stage in our lives where we become really self-aware and we talked before about where does that happen? Where's that point in time where everything shifts for us? How do you think we can protect the next generation? I don't think we can, because it's still so insidious. I think we've got such a long way to go. But how do we start having those conversations at home, within schools? If you're a teacher, if your kid's already coming home and saying, well, mummy, don't eat that because my teacher says if we eat too much of that. I had one Instagram follower who is a teacher. Her child came home from school from a home ec class, and she'd taken in normal mayonnaise and been told she shouldn't use that because that would make her fat.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to
Wow.
unpick there.
There's a lot of stuff to unpick there. But when it is so insidious, and it's so insidious in all these, where we, in our own home environment, we can exert a little bit of control, can't we? We know that we talk about food in a more neutral way. We talk about our bodies in a more neutral way. We can control that. But the minute they're outside that door, and my kids are that bit older, meeting their friends, and their friend says, oh, well, I'm not having carbs.
Yeah.
I
think you just have to talk openly with them, don't you, and answer questions and let them know that there are alternatives, that there's more than one way to view food, for example. There's a lot around kind of education about these things, particularly in schools. I know that Molly Forbes has got does training for teachers in schools to help address some of these issues, particularly around body image and movement and that kind of thing more broadly. And it's something that I'd quite like to get involved in. I'd like to do workshops with sort of teenagers who are PE refusers and their parents. So something around trying to make a connection with joyful movement being a shared experience with a parent. And I know that that's going to be a difficult sell, particularly with this with students who are already not engaged in PE, but the option that there are other things, like PE doesn't have to be your only experience of exercise. Their PE teachers are very limited with what they can offer. They've got to deliver it to 30 kids at a time. This is about finding your own niche and your own thing that you enjoy, not under the gaze of other people within the school. That this can be a personal thing that can happen outside of school, and trying to sort of unpick some of that stuff around body image and about why we feel the way we do about our bodies, and that it's possible to engage in exercise for the fun of it, because that's not something that you're taught in school.
No.
It's competitive, which for some kids that is fabulous. I'm not saying we should lose competitiveness in sport in school, because for some children that is the only thing that they've got that brings them joy, and they deserve that too. So I'm not saying that we get rid of races and stuff, because they're great, but it was a painful thing for me. I hated PE, hated everything about it. And so many fitness professionals say the same thing. So it's about letting people know that there are alternatives beyond your bubble. There are other things that you can experience and try that might help you. And I think if you can create a space where children and their parents are both unpicking those things, then you hope that perhaps that will bring some conversations into the home as well. So that's an idea I've got, but
Well, I think it's a brilliant idea, really brilliant idea, and so important. And the reality is that they are the next generation of little mouthpieces, aren't they?
Definitely.
I will not forget my middle coming home recently, and they'd had a PSHE lesson, and it'd been around food and things. And one, she'd stood up because they'd been told, someone had said, you should never drink a fizzy drink. And she put her hand up and said, I don't agree. And she and argued back. And then she also had to create a logo for a belief she had. And it was a B and an E sat under each other, and she'd drawn all flowers around it, and it was a home on the side. And I said to her, what does that, what is that? I'm going to say squid. She's going to kill me if she ever listens to it, but she won't, because I'm not cool, so she won't. She said, so it stands for body equality, Mum.
Oh, wow. That must have been a real proud mum moment.
It was. And there was that moment where I went, you know what? There are so many days where I think, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing well enough as a parent. And then that was one of those moments where I went, oh, Rose, you're doing it all right. Yeah. So,
I've got it here, actually. Not really helpful for a podcast, but I found this that my eldest had made. It said, this is my mum.
This is my mum. Okay.
And then inside it says, my mum is amazing in so many different ways. Here, I'll list them. She is great for hugs. She is super nice and kind. She is a good cook. She perseveres. And then there's another bit. She's so impressive. She does classes, uh, and she's amazing. And then there's a bit about what Misfits is and like how it's a clever name, don't you think? I'm really proud of my mum for creating it. I'm so proud that she's traveling around the world to teach them. She's going to London to see a person with tons of followers. That was Tally Rye. And
Oh,
on some social
wow.
media, I love my mum. And like she's written about our merchandise. Like it's
Oh
just
my
absolutely,
God,
it's
Becky,
just
that's so
amazing.
lovely. That's it. But that's it. When you are modeling what
Yeah.
that can look
And the
like and
idea
what
that
that
my
can be.
child is proud of like their fat fitness instructor mum, it's just like,
It's,
it's the same thing, like that
yeah,
proud moment. You're like,
just, yeah, this is worth it. And the
yeah,
reality is that you and I, probably part of us, start the whole kind of healing our relationship with food and movement came from having our kids.
yeah,
And sometimes that's where it has to start, because it's easier to do that because we're
yeah,
conditioned to do that, to think about others first. But when you see it reflected back like that,
yeah.
yeah,
You realise that really matters. And I didn't
yeah.
make him sit down and like write that. Like it wasn't like forced.
Here
Right,
is
that mum's
draw
cool.
my t-shirts. No. And it is a brilliant logo, and it is a brilliant brand. Misfits is
Yeah.
it's brilliant. It says, what do you hope it says? What do you hope your brand says about what you do?
Well, I like the fact that it's a play on the idea that you can in that book, Hazel's written that it's like misfits equals weirdos, but also links to like um, women who exercise. And although it's not just women, I have like lots of different people that come to my classes, but and none of us are weirdos, but we are in the marginalized group within the fitness industry. We're not the mainstream fitness people as a rule. And that's what it is. It's about like creating a space for the people that are on the outskirts and making them feel like they belong. And by not belonging, we belong, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of, that's where it came from. And it's, yeah, I really like the name, and it fits with what we do, and
Yeah.
it sounds fun and sounds a bit silly, and that
Yeah.
like fits perfectly with me.
Yeah. Fun, joyful, bit silly, but
It doesn't
and
take
a
itself too
little bit, no,
seriously.
don't take itself too seriously, and that little bit nonconformist. All the things
Yeah.
I like best in people, Becky.
Yeah.
And where can people find you, your classes? Where could they go if they wanted to find a health every size fitness instructor? Where would people go?
So for my classes, you can visit misfitsworkout.co.uk. Forgot my own website then. Should I say that again?
Yeah.
It's misfitsworkout.co.uk, or I'm at misfitsworkout on Instagram. And for the work that we're doing with the fitness professionals against weight stigma, the website is againstweightstigma.com, and it's against weight stigma on Instagram. And in terms of finding health for every size instructors, we will eventually have our own uh, like directory of instructors within our fitness professionals against weight stigma website, but that is a kind of coming soon part of it. But there are lots of places that you can go to. The Health for Every Size website, that's managed by Lindo Bacon, has got a list of professionals that are assigned to being at Health Every Size. And the other place to look is the Super Fit Heroes website. They do plus size activewear. They're based in America, but they have practitioners from across the globe, including some in the UK. So you can search by postcode and find if there's somebody nearby. But there are a lot of us that are doing things online. So looking for the hashtag Health Every Size on Instagram is a great place to find practitioners and people like Karen Preen and
Yeah.
various others. School of Strut is another great one if you like to dance.
Oh.
They're like, her classes are amazing, and the fact that they're online is brilliant. Like they're very sassy, like fabulous confidence building. Like there's loads of people out there doing amazing work. Have a look at my follow list, like the people who I follow on my Misfits workout account. There's lots of great stuff there. Tally Rye is another great one. She
Yeah.
shares lots of things that people are doing. So yeah, there's lots of
Amazing.
places to find out more.
Amazing. Thank you. And thank you so much for being here with us today. And
Thank you
just
for
to
having me.
finish, you're so welcome. Well, I'm very grateful. And I should tell my listeners, this is the second time we've recorded it because I didn't hit record the first. And if you could stand on top of a mountain and send one message out to everybody, what would that be?
So I'm going to pretend that I'm thinking about it, but I'm going to say
have a think.
I did think about it the first time round, but I now know what it is I want to say. And it is about, like, look within, like, listen to your own gut, like, listen to yourself. There's a lot more worth in what you've got going on there than you give yourself credit for. Question things. If things don't feel right to you, question them. You don't have to listen to what other people are telling you. You don't have to listen to what I'm telling you. Do your own homework, do your own research, find out what works for you and go with that. Like, you don't have to believe what the diet industry is telling you. You don't have to believe what the fitness industry is telling you. Find your own lane, find your own community and people, but listen to what's going on in here. That's the important thing.
Trust yourself, definitely.
Yeah, build some trust with yourself. Yeah, absolutely.
It's an amazing place to start. Thank you again, Becky. I really appreciate you joining us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you're able to take something of value away from today's episode. Perhaps one small action you can put into practice today. If you are enjoying Reframe, then please do subscribe and rate the podcast, as this helps us reach more lovely listeners. As always, here at Reframe Club, we are rooting for you.